To talk about ethics and the arts, we should know what is ethics. Well, at its simple, ethic is a system of moral principles that affect how people make decisions and how they live their life. Ethic is concerned with what is good for individuals and societies, and is also described as moral philosophy. The term is derived from the Greek word ethos, which can mean custom, habit, character, or disposition. Ethics cover the following dilemmas: how to live a good life, or rights and responsibilities, the language, which wrong or right, moral decision, what is good and what is bad. Also, other concepts of ethics have been derived from religions, philosophies, and cultures. They infuse debates on topics like human rights and human situations. In this case, we're going to talk about the arts and how related they are with the ethics. The definition of moral is concerning or related to what is right and wrong in human behavior, based on what you think is right and what you think is wrong. Well, considered right and good by most people, agreeing with the standard of right behaviors.
Art is a form of communication? Yes, art is a form of communication. What separates it from other forms of communication is that the information comes from a subjective source and is then interpreted in a subjective way by the viewer. The only problem that you run into sometimes is when the viewer interprets things in a different way than was originally intended. Other times, the intended meaning, if there is one, is so vague that people will not immediately know that what they are supposed to get it from, leading them to think that those who claim to get the meaning are simply imagining something or making up. But no form of communication is entirely efficient, and the subjective nature of art is the very thing that gives its meaning and importance to us. So, if the art is moral or not, it depends on the feeling communicated by the artist. If the feeling or the experience that the artist is communicating is evil or perverse or trivial or silly, it is possible for the work of art to be artistically good but morally bad.
In ancient times, what art intended to do was to represent the real world or represent what was happening at the moment. For example, in the Byzantine era, the king was the one closest to God, and the artists represented this reality by painting the king near the saints and Jesus. In this era, the Christian religion was established. The art contains various religious elements showing us how religion was such an important thing at that time. So basically, art shows us what was happening at that time, at that historical moment, what was going on.
Okay, now that we already know about the basic concepts of art, we're gonna talk about how does art is a way to understand human nature. When we are talking about human nature, we are talking about natural science. And what is natural science? Well, natural science it's a branch of science, like the word says, which deals with the physical world. For example, chemistry, geology, biology, sociology, physics are like the topics that are more like connect with the real world. So the question is, how do art help to understand these kind of topics? First of all, we already know that, or well, it's a tradition to believe that art imitates life. For example, the painter represents what he or she sees by producing a scene on a canvas. Or for example, a sculptor does the same with bronze or with stone. A photographer or filmmaker does it even more directly, or a writer describes life on his or her books. Are like simple concepts of to understand this statement. But some have questioned the one-way art nature of mimesis by arguing that art also changes the way we view the world. And in fact, life sometimes imitates art rather than the other way around.
In conclusion, art is not directly related with ethics. Why? Because art is just another way of communication. Let's say, what separates art from the other form of communication is that the information comes from subjective sources and it's then interpreted in the subjective way by the viewer. The only problem that you run into something is when the viewer interprets things in a different way than was it originally intended. So let's say when something is not morally correct for us can be morally correctly for another person that becomes from another culture. So if I saw a paint, for example, I can say for me it's right, but for other people it's wrong. It depends of the perception, the culture, and the context all around the situation.